Hello and welcome back to the Comic Books Matter podcast. I'm your host, Jesse, and with me today is another very special guest. They are Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Stan, Destroyer of Chairs, Fan of All and Fan of None, Uppercuts PR Coordinator, Chris Compendio. Chris, how are you doing tonight?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for having me on. Have I destroyed chairs?
Oh, well, see, that's like a weird deep cut because I love the video of you running around Final Fantasy VII Remake. Annihilating the chairs and saying this game's all right.
Yeah, no, I just like breaking game worlds. Like if a game lets me do it, I just want to mess around with it.
It's better when the game worlds are empty, so you can just see how much little this matters. All these extra details.
Right, but in that specific case, like I was in a crowded area and no one really gave a hoot.
If you want to curse, by the way, you can. I don't want to try to censor you.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Knock down those chairs. Very satisfying.
But Chris, again, thank you for being on. I'm excited to have an episode with you. I'm excited for the book you brought today because I never thought in a million years anybody would bring this book. So to kind of jump right into it, the book Chris brought, the series is the JLA Avengers crossover by Kurt Busiek and George Perez. Or
Avengers JLA, depending on which issue number.
Yeah.
To switch on and off because equality, I guess, is important.
I wonder how that deal got written. It's like, who gets the top billing in the first issue?
Right, yeah.
Who was putting up the most money for this?
Yeah. It's kind of a really interesting, but it's a stupid thing that I'm interested in, especially when it comes to, say, movie posters.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that's mostly a contractual thing.
Yeah, and that's what it feels like, because movie posters are so awful at it.
Totally. Well, I'm thinking about Towering Inferno. With, oh my god, who was in that movie? I already forget. I think it was Paul Newman, and I'm typing, sorry if you hear
you're fine.
Keyboard noise, but it's Paul Newman and Steve McQueen. And because they're both like huge actors, it's like, who's gonna get first billing? So the compromise was that Steve McQueen is all the way on the left, the first one from the left, but Paul Newman, his name is up higher.
Gotcha.
So it's like, okay, so like, Avengers JLA being issue 4 with like the cool Superman holding Mjolnir and Cap's shield, like that's the coolest cover. Like that's the Cap right there. No pun intended. And semantics. And this is 2003, 2004?
Yeah, it's later than I thought it was, because I always think, when I think of Kurt Busiek and George Perez, I just think of the 90s.
Right.
In the 80s, because that's where I feel like their strides were in a lot of ways. But yeah, it's like not last decade. Gosh, time sucks. But early 2000s. And it's super it's just a super fascinating book. Like, there's a lot of weird things in that book.
Totally.
I haven't read it. I haven't read it since I bought it. So rereading it with like a conscious brain of what the world is and like characters and stuff and the lore, it's just bizarre what they pulled off in that book, and they do it well.
Totally. Yeah. I think I've reread this so many times. So much so that like I pulled it out of my shelf in preparation for this, and I didn't even need to open it up again. I was like, oh, I remember everything that happened in this. And I think I read this for the first time in like an in-between period of me kind of shifting my preferences, I guess, between the two behemoths, because I was very much into the DC animated universe.
Okay.
Specifically Justice League. I think I got into Batman the Animated Series a little too late.
Yeah.
So I think I'm to Batman Beyond and Static Shock first, and then Justice League was just kind of my thing. Justice League Unlimited, even better. Like, I think it holds up even better for me as an adult, because it just really revels in a lot of deep cuts.
Yeah.
Like, I think the Booster Gold episode is my favorite episode from that show.
That's like one of the greatest things about that show is at some point every character that you love will show up in there.
Yeah, totally. Except for Plastic Man for presumably copyright reasons, but that's
but
the point.
I feel like didn't we get him eventually in Brave and the Bold?
We do. Yeah, I believe Tom Kenny voiced him, which is literally the perfect choice.
Yeah, and that's like the perfect show for a Plastic Man character.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What's super fascinating about the crossover is the teams that were on it too, because it was like the Grant Morrison JLA at the time, and then the Avengers. I don't know really the team, like who was writing the Avengers at the time, but George Perez and Kurt Busiek were the ones who wrote the Avengers reboot when all the heroes came back.
Right.
And that was like a huge run for them when that happened. So it's cool that they got that creative team together too.
Yeah, I am totally depending on you for context, by the way, because
yeah, that's fine. But my question is, how did you get into comics in this way? But then how did you find this book in particular?
I barely remember, but I'm pretty sure that I just found this at like I think I found issue 2 first. I believe I don't know if it was in a shop or at a convention, but this was like early high school, so this was like early 2010s. And I hadn't really gotten into that many comic books. I think the ones that I had, my dad had The Death of Superman.
Yeah,
I think that was like the first story that I read because he just had it, and that was like his favorite one.
What a book to be the first book you get exposed to.
Right? Isn't that that's crazy?
Every page is a 2-page spread, all drawn by Dan Jurgens. Superman.
Yeah.
It's a crazy book.
Totally. And then I don't remember if I bought it or if my dad bought it, but I had a little book. It had like a number of assorted stories, but it was JLA Strength in Numbers, and it was just like more like a collection of different stories. So it was when the name JLA came.
Yeah.
There was part of that was like part of an arc where Superman was like fucking chrome, which I didn't know the context of that at the time.
Was that like the blue, the light, like
yes,
the light? Yeah.
Yes,
he got split in two because the sun went out.
Right. Yeah.
Comic books.
Prometheus was a villain in one of those stories.
Yeah, that's a great villain. Yeah.
Yeah. He was. Yeah, Prometheus shows up in JLA Avengers really briefly, and he gets his ass handed to him by Cap,
which is good because I mean, honestly, Prometheus is like a great villain, but also the worst villain.
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, he did some pretty fucked up stuff, but to be fair, he was pretty fucked up too.
Yeah.
Like he had like a fucking fucking Bonnie and Clyde parents.
Watch them.
Yeah. Fucking wild.
It's like Breaking Bad Batman, but also Batman can't control his emotions fully.
Yeah. So this was kind of. I don't think I was fully into the MCU yet. If I got this like 2009-ish, like I might have like liked Iron Man, and I don't think I'd seen Thor or Cap yet.
Okay.
So this was kind of new to me, and it's weird because like I started with issue 2, so like it begins with them fighting, and to me it was naive me was interested in the power level comparison.
Yeah.
So, when you look at like the big old spread, when you look at the cover, it's like who's fighting each other. Like Thor and Superman are fighting. Hercules and Wonder Woman are fighting. Cap's fighting Batman. Hawkeye and Green Arrow are at a distance shooting arrows from each other.
Yeah.
And then, like the Wasp is fucking destroying the Atom, which is hilarious to me. And then after that, once I started to get a better hold of these characters, like actually, I think this miniseries was my introduction to Vision.
That's
I did not know who Vision was before this. Then I got more interested in the ideological differences and the conceptual differences between Marvel and DC, because the thing is, when people think of Marvel versus DC, they think of Marvel versus DC.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
And that was like what, like a limited, like what would you call that? Like a event miniseries or something? Like,
yeah, I don't know how many issues the main series was, but everybody talked about the spin-offs and stuff.
Right. Yeah, like the amalgamated universe.
Yeah, that's always what people keep talking about.
Right, yeah, but like the core Marvel versus DC is just like fans voting on who would win in a fight.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, didn't like, I feel like Wolverine beat Lobo or something ridiculous like that, and like other stupid things. And
yeah, honestly, I don't know much about the voting thing, but that wouldn't surprise me just because of how terrible of a character Lobo is in a lot of ways.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, he's a great design. Maybe not
absolutely.
the best written in any time he shows up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I have some amalgam stuff. Like I have the Amazonian, I forget what her name is, but she's like the combination of Storm and Wonder Woman.
Yeah, don't they kind of? I think they just call her Amazon Warrior, which is
probably great name.
Yeah, it's great. 10 out of 10.
Yeah,
good job.
I got X Patrol, which is X-Men and Doom Patrol, and I think I have a Dark Claw issue lying around somewhere, which is Batman and Wolverine.
Yeah.
And I know of some other ones, like I think Doctor Strange Fate is one of them, which is a great name actually.
Yeah, I think X Patrol is pretty good too, and I like that they actually put the two teams together that are kind of parodies of each other.
Yeah. These were one shots, right?
It's just they were
what if? Shots. Yeah. And I wonder how that deal went, and I wonder how this deal came together, because this is a much more meatier story. Like there is a story.
And in a way, if they really wanted to, it could have such ramifications for each continuity.
I mean, my understanding is that spoilers for the end, but like what's his name, Krona?
Yeah.
Turns into a cosmic egg.
Mm-hmm.
That egg comes back.
Yeah.
In the Justice League comics, is my understanding. Like, just the fucking crime syndicate or whatever, like Ultraman and those dudes, they get fucking destroyed in the first pages of issue 1.
When I read that, I'm like, I know they come back like,
yes,
literally like a decade later, easily. Like,
yeah, well, like my understanding is them coming back like has ramifications. Like, this actually like the cold open, which is like to show how dire things are, actually comes back later in the DC continuity, of course.
Rip the crime syndicate too, dying like about a dozen times in the comic books.
Oh, that's really funny. Right, yeah. So then it got to what makes Marvel and DC unique at their core, because it's a lot of there's the parallels with the the fighting matchups and whatnot, but then there is this is how the world operates, this is how society views these superheroes, and they're very different, and it all culminates in the climax where like or like Krona is like literally trying to shove the universes together, like physically shove two Earths together, and they are incompatible. It does not get any more overt and less subtle than that. And then like the end, like I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but like
you're fine.
But like the ends, they kind of like they literally salute each other, and they're like, yeah, we got our differences, but you know what? We're good with each other. Like we totally have an understanding of what's going on. And having Superman and Cap as like the North and South Pole ideology, and just kind of like butting heads, to me is just fascinating. And I think if you kind of want to look at what defines both of these brands, having them clash together is like a really interesting way to go about that.
Yeah, and that first issue in particular too, I feel like, and then comparing it to the last issue, but in that first issue they really show the moral differences, or the ideology ideology of the two worlds and how different they are when they both start to cross over. And then when you compare it to the last issue, it shows you how the companies see each other in a lot of ways.
I guess so, yeah.
Because a lot of people always talk about how Marvel and DC hate each other and they're always trying to compete, which I find it fascinating that people put personalities to companies, but that's a whole other
I'm sure the executives hate each other.
They might, but I remember though there when DC moved from the New York base to Burbank based in California, there was a whole thing where Marvel wrote them an open letter saying, "We're gonna miss you." I think they had like a going away party for DC, like because there are two companies that at one point were definitely hating each other Like there's a whole backstory that we could get into there. But in the modern age, I think they're very much on equal footing with each other and they respect each other.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I love the first issue so much for what it's trying to say about each world. And I don't remember who said it, but I've stolen this from them. But I'm not going to credit them. Not credit them. I'm not going to credit myself with it because I've read it somewhere.
Sure.
But the whole idea is that the Marvel characters are people you can relate to, even if they are superpower. They are people who grew up in your neighborhoods, right? Yeah. They grew up on those streets. And then the DC characters, they are just gods. They are gods that live among us, and they're trying their best to save you.
Yes.
And they show that so clearly in that first issue.
Yes, and the way Supes and Cap are able to kind of spin that in their own like kind of cynical ways is that Cap views the DC heroes as tyrants, as like idols, like demanding to be worshipped. They have movie deals, museums, and Supes is like, yo, you let your place go to shit. Yeah. You guys suck. Look how they treat you.
You could do better here. Like, why aren't you doing better?
Yeah, look at fucking Dr. Doom here with his own goddamn nation. There is a part here where Batman beats up the Punisher off panel.
He's like, I think it was either Flash or Green Lantern, whoever was paired up with him. Was like, you didn't really have to take the time to take out that drug dealer.
That was Plastic Man, actually.
Oh, Plastic Man, yeah. It's like, he's like, but I'm glad you did or whatever. But I also like that Plastic Man felt like at home at the moment when he was there.
I guess so, yeah.
He's like, this feels natural.
He says drug dealers never could stand them, even back when I was a crook. And then, like, he's like, well, better get back. And he turns around and Batman's beating the shit out of Frank Castle.
Yeah.
And he later says, do you follow the plan or do you spend 20 minutes beating up some loon in Kevlar to save some drug dealers?
Yeah,
and, like, Superman considers stopping the Hulk from going on a rampage. And they're like, no, don't do it, man.
But then you get that dichotomy when they start fighting in the second issue where Cap and Batman are just fighting each other and they're equal in their fighting style. And Batman's like, I know you're stronger than me, but this is going to take you a long time. How about we just work together and figure out what is going on here?
Yeah, and that was an interesting turn because, like, Cap was pissy in the last issue. So, again, reading issue 2 first, I was kind of weirded out. I was like, wait, that's... Because, like, Cap is the tactical leader of the Avengers.
Yeah.
As you know, I guess Superman is the leader of the JLA, but he is not the powerhouse. So, you know, he never fights Superman, I guess. So it's the pairing there was like, it was odd going from issue to issue, but it makes sense, I guess.
It does also show a fascinating thing with the dichotomy of each team, where you have like Batman kind of being the second, but he is the tactician. But then the tactician of the Avengers is the first, and like Thor is the Superman, and he's like the second.
Totally. And then other pairings like
Flash and Hawkeye was great.
Yeah. Oh, the Quippy boys. And then also, like, just his rivalry with Oliver. Like, you see, like, in the background, like, when they're partying in the 30s, when things are all fucky, like, you see them, like, shooting arrows at each, like, they're shooting the arrows through each other's arrows and stuff, like, in the background, and it's just cutesy stuff like that.
There's also and then with redemption in a lot of those segments, too, like, with Hal coming back, he's like, and even Barry is like, why are we not in the future? Like, what happens to us?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that gets pretty awkward when they see all that shit.
Yeah, and like, but I like that moment when Hal goes, that Wally kid, like, he's a good kid. He's gonna do really well for you.
Should we start by talking about the setup and the villains?
I'm gonna turn it over. I'm gonna turn that whole description to you though, because you've read it way more than me.
Sure. So it is. It's Krona, who is from the DC universe, and there's Grandmaster from the Marvel universe. I feel like I know much more about Grandmaster just because Jeff Goldblum exists, but
I think Krona is like, it's kind of like a non-deflated Guardian. Like I believe he's from.
Oh, sure. Yes.
And left before they did the whole ring shenanigans.
Totally. So he's just trying to find like the meaning of existence and shit, right? Like he's just trying to find, he's very interested to see like how worlds and universes are created, and he's like he's like, we gotta go back. We gotta see how this goes. He's like looking at the hands thing, and then everything blows up because we're not supposed to see that shit. So he basically starts a game with the Grandmaster, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember the exact details of the. Oh, okay. So Grandmaster's like, hey, I'll show you this dude who can tell you some shit if you play this game with me, right? So they have chess pieces, and their chess pieces are the Justice League and the Avengers from their respective universes. So inadvertently, these two superhero teams they're fighting against each other, but they do not realize that they were fighting for these two dudes. I believe the Avengers are fighting for Krona and the JLA for Grandmaster.
And they're all trying to get artifacts from both worlds.
It's a scavenger hunt.
Yeah.
It's a scavenger hunt. It's ridiculous. Do you remember what the items are? Do you remember?
I'm going to try to see how many I can get. I know there is the Ultimate Nullifier from them, from Marvel.
Oh, sure.
The Infinity Stones.
Sorry, the Soul Gems, you mean?
Soul Gems, yeah, because it's so weird. And like the Cosmic Cube is separate in that, I believe.
Yes.
And those are the three I remember from Marvel. I know.
The Casket of Ancient Winters is here.
No idea what that is.
Well, I mean, I think that was in Thor 1. If you, that was the thing that like the Frost Giants wanted. The Wands of Watum, I don't know what that is.
I'm assuming that's Moon Knight something.
Yeah, probably. DC, on the other hand, they had a Mother Box, right?
Mother Box, Power Battery. Man, I had those and I just lost it. A Boom Tube, right?
No. They had the Orb of Ra, though.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The Medusa mask, the bell, the wheel, and the jar. I don't know.
That I don't know what that is, but the Medusa mask is so fascinating because I never hear it called that. I was thinking about what's his name that uses it. I can't remember his name either now. But anyways,
I'm assuming it's not Medusa, but
no, it's not. But like you can change emotions.
Right. The Spear of Ra, the Orb of Ra, and the Spear of Destiny. Excuse me.
Spear of Destiny is fascinating. Supposedly the spear that pierced Jesus.
What? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, DC.
As a small side note, like the Phantom Stranger, right? He shows up later on in these issues.
Yes, he does.
And it's really fascinating what DC doing all of this religious subtext, because the Phantom Stranger in the 80s got reimagined to be literally Judas. And so he's trapped to walk eternity because he betrayed Jesus.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's super fascinating. It's one of the most fascinating characters that doesn't get a lot of screen time.
Gotcha. I like how this is Kyle Rayner, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just his power battery. They go to his apartment.
It's like, why my power battery?
Right. So they are like basically crossing over each other's universes, thinking that if they fail, their universe will be destroyed, and that's not totally true. But right. So they cross each other's universes, and issue 2 of 4 is basically the bulk of that issue is the scavenger hunt. Issue 1 being like, hey, Marvel, DC's like, oh, Marvel's world is weird. Like, I think they said the Earth is physically smaller in the Marvel universe. Like they transport to where Metropolis would be, and it's just like grasslands.
Which
and they're like,
kind of makes sense for how many heroes are in hub areas like that.
Right, yeah. It's literally called Central City, for God's sakes. Right, so and then there's a lot more of that. Like they go to like, do they go to Asgard in here? Or yes, they go to Asgard, and Wonder Woman fights Marvel Hercules.
Yeah, my favorite line in that too is like, "Are you the Hercules that killed? Is it
the spoiler of Hippolyta?"
Yeah, and he goes, "Yes," basically.
I would not use those words myself, but I did have the honor of, and then he gets punched.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Arthur Curry's fighting the She-Hulk.
Which seems like a weird power dynamic there.
Yeah. Also, okay, so Pietro Quicksilver, is like trying to figure out the Speed Force, because that's obviously not a thing in Marvel, and Wanda, Scarlet Witch, her chaos magic is going fucking nuts in the DC universe. I don't remember if that was explained.
I don't know. I know she talks about how it's different. It's like a different type of power.
Right.
And then at some point they show her and Zatanna like tapping into it together.
Yes, that's a cool like 2-page spread where you see like it kind of does like the face-off thing.
Where they just split in half,
yeah, it's really cool. And they're kind of like psychically scouting, seeing what's going on. And it's cool. Like there's I'm looking at this like literally the middle of issue 2, where it's like Zatanna and Scarlet Witch, and you also see like the conversations between the teams.
Yeah.
You like the DC side talking on one side and the Marvel on the other side, and it's really cool parallelism, and they're trying to kind of figure each other out. Like Iron Man's kind of like stroking the mother box, like trying to see what's going on there. I guess it's Wally West, right?
It would be Wally West if they haven't switched yet.
Yes, Wally is like he's like putting on a thing that's steel made, so he can gather speed force, so he can use it in the Marvel universe, I think.
Yeah, which I mean, it's a good Deus Ex thing, because when he goes over there, he can't access it, so it gives him the ability to run around still.
Yeah, it's fun stuff, and then some more interesting pairings, like Red Tornado versus Vision, and synthetic dudes.
There's also that one scene though in the big fight near the end where I think it's Martian Manhunter and Vision collide, going incorporeal.
Phase through each other. Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. So basically, Cap and Bats are figuring out what's actually happening. They find security recordings between Chroma and Grandmaster, which I think is ridiculous. But there's also this great part where like you kind of see Superman shit talking the Avengers to Arthur, and Cap is watching this, and Adam's kind of like, I think what he meant was he's like trying to be like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. But here's a great image: Darkseid with the Infinity Gauntlet. Yeah,
and he tries to use it, and he's like, well, this is pointless. It doesn't work here.
Yeah, they do seem designed to affect reality, but another reality, they do not function here. So yeah, then they get to the Savage Lands, and the last thing is the Cosmic Cube, and it goes into like the Smash Bros. Everyone is here. Oh well, not the most everyone is here. That's later in the series. But it just goes wild. Everyone's fucking punching each other. But then it's the Thor and Superman fight where things kind of go off the rails.
Yeah, because Superman demolishes Thor, and then everybody's like, he just knocked out Thor. Well, we gotta murder this man.
They're really mad. They're really upset to see that. But Superman was really upset. He was like, tell yourself that, mister. Ease yourself to sleep at night while you let your world go to hell. Where I come from, lives matter. And he has the death eyes. Like, he has red eyes, and he's going to fucking blast him. He stops Mjolnir with his hand, which is wild. And it's just, the dial goes up to 11, which is like, I'm not sure this is the appropriate time for a movie reference.
Yeah, Superman's a bit odd in this, because at times he's really well done, I think. But then at other times, he's just kind of like an action hero, the way his dialogue's written.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, but so anyway, what else? Kyle uses the Cosmic Cube to charge his battery.
Yeah, that was super interesting.
Yeah, but Cap throws the game, and he lets Grandmaster win, I think, but Chrono's like, no, fuck that! And he just starts fucking punching the Grandmaster.
Just beating him.
Yes, because he wants to see what Grandmaster promised, and it is Galactus Destroyer of Worlds. And then he beats him up too. Like, this guy just loves beating up people, I guess.
Kronos seems to have anger issues. Like, you're being honest.
Yeah. So what did you think of issue 3 when things just kind of like...
Yeah, so there's good parts of issue 3 and 4, but at the same time, it feels really messy.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if Kirby's ever talked about this, but he talked about it in his Avengers run, where basically he's like, this is the only chance I might ever have to write the Avengers, so I'm going to write all the characters I want. And it ended up kind of burning him in the end because he wrote too many characters.
Right.
And I wonder if the same issue happened here, because George Perez also has a thing where he's like, I want to draw every character in the universe. And I think those end scenes really become that, when they're like, when eventually they figure out what's going on with Kronos and stuff after he tries to merge the worlds and try to erase their memories, which is super fascinating. Right. They just go to war with every villain.
Yeah. The cover of
that cover is gorgeous.
It's dense.
It's dense, but I would love to have that on a big old poster.
Yeah. It's insane. Jesus, I didn't even notice that Oracle's avatar is just floating there, right next to Giant Man. What? Okay. And there are some people who are they're like, not everyone can fly, so I just noticed that there are like a lot of people who are just being transferred by different Green Lanterns, which I think is really funny.
My favorite thing too is like how random some of the characters' appearances will be. Like all of a sudden, the Fantastic Four are there because they needed a plot point, and so like, oh, we can plug the Fantastic Four into this plot point.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. Also, Plastic Man is in different places because he's stretchy.
Yeah. And there's that weird beginning part, I think, in issue 4 when it opens up with Spider-Man. I'm like, is this the only time we've ever seen Spider-Man in all 4 of these issues?
Yeah, I don't even think he has dialogue, but yeah.
Yeah, he's just saving someone randomly.
Yeah. So let's I kind of want to scroll through the I'm kind of scrolling through issue 3 and just seeing like where the weird crossovers are. Like, for example, I think Black Canary and Hawkeye are a thing.
Yeah, that's like that was the part that threw me off, because like when I was reading it, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And then there's like, I think there's Dr. Doom's in the Source Wall.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't know what.
Super fascinating.
I didn't know what was going on there. That was
especially like if you have no idea what the Source Wall is. That
I don't
alone
know what the Source Wall is.
Basically, I'm probably gonna butcher what the actual definition of it is.
Oh sure.
But it's basically like a seal of the DC universe to make sure the universe doesn't collapse in on itself. And it's a bunch of like old gods that basically when they die, they just become part of the Source Wall. Or they'll capture like really bad villains and put them in there too.
You gotta have your Source Wall.
Yeah, like in the news, just like they destroyed the Source Wall and bad things happen.
So let's give some context. So issue 3, so issue 2 ended with Krona fucking destroying Galactus, and Grandmaster's like, hey, I'm gonna use these artifacts as like my nuclear deterrent. And like as he's dying, he's like, I'm gonna use these things. I'm gonna create a new universe, I guess is what he does, because
at least try to.
Yeah, that's what issue 3 is. Like, this is an alternate, I don't know if you call it a timeline or a different universe, where like the JLA and the Avengers like crossing over is like a regular thing. Like they have like parties.
Yeah, they have a recreation of a Justice League issue cover, and they're like as a frame picture where like the Justice League are coming out of the smoke and the Avengers are on the table.
Yes.
And that's a parody of like when Earth 2's Justice League or the Justice Society is around the table and the Justice League are coming out of the smoke.
That's just, I mean, like, I want to say that's clever. Like at the same time, that's kind of like, wink, wink. No, but like that's, when else are you going to get a chance to?
Yeah. When else are you going to be able to parody something like that? Yeah.
A lot of other things.
And the thing about the parties too is like the Avengers have parties all the time. Like that is just a thing that happened in the comics back then. Like I have annuals on annuals where it ends with them having some kind of party. Yeah. I think there's one where it ends with them playing baseball. So it's like,
wow, just like the Twilight movie.
So it's super fast. And but what I love too is like they did it in the first issue a bit, but my favorite thing is when they show them fighting each other's battles in a weird way. Like all of a sudden there's this bad guy in the Avengers universe, or the Marvel universe, which is a DC bad guy, but they're fighting as a team to beat him. Yeah. And that's super fascinating too.
Yeah. There was even some of that in issue 1 where like, like the fucking Starro things are in the Marvel
and they
universe.
Just didn't know what was happening.
Yeah. But yeah, no, they like when Cap and Supes are like confused because they're the only ones who like realize that something's wrong, that this is not what reality is,
and they just start screaming at each other.
Yeah, and like Janet's like, hey, remember that one time when Amazo and Ultron banded together? We had to switch worlds to beat them, or like, let's see, the Grim Reaper and the Key had the Serpent Crown, or Kang and the Lord of Time. Like it's wild. And yeah, they get into an argument, and then this is where things start to get confusing for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when Cap and Soups realize what's going on and they like fight each other, that breaks the universe.
Yeah, like these last two issues have some really confusing plot points for me too, as a long time reader. And there's another thing too, like where Metron's just running around the guy in the chair. He's just around, and I don't know what his point was. I don't know what the point of Metron was in this whole book.
I don't know. He seems comfy on that chair, just observing. I always thought that was his thing.
Well, that's kind of he's kind of like the Watcher, where he just knows everything.
Yeah. The Watcher also in this miniseries
and doesn't say
hanging outside. He's hanging outside the Watchtower. He's on the moon, looking through the windows of the Watchtower, and Oliver Queen's like, well, I don't like that dude.
Yeah, I think there's one point where in the first issue, because he shows up in the first issue too, and I think his Green Lantern's like, "Are you just not going to say anything? Like, who are you?" Right. But yeah, like I think it's a thing where they become the realization that they are like they're not right, nothing's right there. That's where the worlds start not combining anymore, because now people are like they can't mesh. So I think that's what's cracking it, is that fight, because they realize something's wrong.
Right, and then it kind of bleeds into the rest of the world, the rest of the worlds rather, where like things are either snowy or on fire. There's like people, the civilians are being displaced.
Yeah.
Like there's a cab driver who's from the DC universe. He is stuck in the Marvel universe. He's this Middle Eastern man from a fictional country in the DC universe, and he goes through and is like, "Hey, I know you. These people said that my country doesn't exist." So a lot of fuckery going on.
And yeah, when that happens, like don't they like all basically get knocked out and they wake up in that mess and they're like, "What is happening?"
Pretty much, and then they have Kronos' face shows up.
Yeah,
like fucking Zordon or something like that. And
his spaceship isn't his spaceship just Galactus' body?
Oh yeah, I think that's a little later, but yeah. Superman and Iron Man go up for reconnaissance because like there's like this divide between the two worlds, and they see what's happening, and it's a 2-page spread of giant hands pushing the Marvel and DC Earths together.
Yeah.
It is ridiculous. There is a moon, and then there's a second moon that's broken. It's ridiculous. And then Tony says it's not possible, can't be seeing this. And Superman just goes, and I think this dialogue is crazy. He says, "You're not seeing this, not literally. It's our minds trying to comprehend, to process what we're witnessing in a way we can grasp."
But the thing is, the funny thing about that line is like future spoilers, but at the end of the last book, when they're like, "What are we gonna do about our worlds?" and the Spectre just shows up and he's like, "Yeah, let me fix."
Yeah, let me just. I got my own giant hands.
That was real because the Spectre's real. We know he's real.
Yeah, insane.
Yeah,
absolutely crazy. Yeah. So then they all shoot laser beams, and then it explodes again, and then I don't know. Then they're back at Avengers Mansion, and Jarvis is like, "Oh man, the house is blown up, but it's okay. We're all good. So let's all." Oh yeah, Phantom Stranger's here, and then
he's basically like, I know where the Grandmaster is. Let's go talk to him.
Jesus, what a Deus Ex Machina. Yeah.
I mean, that's Phantom Stranger's character in a lot of ways. Though it's like, totally. I know the answer here.
Totally. I love this image of the DC and Marvel Earths are like Venn diagrams, and Kronos like stuck in between them like a baby.
He's like, isn't he like laughing?
I don't know why you'd find that funny, but yeah. Sure.
He's like, haha, my worlds.
Yeah, so Grandmaster is giant. He's a big huge boy.
And he's quite ugly at this point.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He is no Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so you can save both your worlds, but here are the worlds. Here is the sequence of events you're going to restore if you succeed. And then it's just
it's a weird thing where they combined it and rewrote history because of it. Because I don't think we established that like Kyle Rayner isn't Green Lantern, it's Hal, and Barry's the Flash, and
Barry isn't fucking dead.
Yeah, and I think there's a few other things where it's just like certain characters are just different.
Arthur Curry still has both of his hands.
Yeah. It's funny that's mostly the DC characters that get reversed. And I honestly think it's just because they wanted to play with those characters.
Apparently Hank Pym is not a wife beater.
Which, I mean, maybe that's a positive we can keep.
Because he sees him slapping Janet in the face and like standing like I don't know, it feels like a trial with the Avengers, but yeah, I guess in this alternate universe he was not. That's ridiculous. Jason Todd's dead. Batman breaks his back. Yada yada yada. Vision and Wanda. So they lost their kids?
Yeah, well, that's a whole other thing, but
that's a fucking bummer.
It's a whole thing where Wanda goes kind of breaks mentally for like I think the first major time it happens is she makes up children.
Yeah.
And so like there's a whole like storyline with them where Vision has to find a way to break it to Wanda that like these kids that we've grown up with, like they're not real.
Sure.
But there's also that really messed up scene where Vision's like skinless.
Yeah. Love it. Love that. WandaVision coming to Disney Plus soon. Yeah. Also Tony Stark's alcoholism. That's another thing to show. Death of Superman. Hal Jordan with a bunch of rings, smirking like an evil person.
I think they show. I think if they don't show it, they talk about it very passing to save the universe.
Yeah, so everyone's pretty gung-ho. It's like, okay, this looks bad, but we have to like restore and like stabilize everything. The only one who does not look psyched is Wanda.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. She has the breaks because of it.
That is sure. So then issue 4 is like, hey, we're finally teaming up. We're gonna do the thing. We're gonna fly to Corona and I don't know, beat the shit out of him. Meanwhile, all the B-listers are on the ground saving people, like Spider-Man and Daredevil, and the Teen Titans are there. I can't tell if that's Static Shock or Black Lightning, but
it's probably Black Lightning. I don't know if they would put Static Shock in the comics yet.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, so you know, it's a lot of talky talk. Vision gets mad because he's like, "I want my kids." They calm him down, and then they make a ship, which is like powered by like the Speed Force and Thor's hammer.
Which I mean, why not?
Yeah. And then, you know, it's a lot of talk, and Cap, he's like, okay, I'm gonna fucking force meditate from the ship, and you lead the troops, Soups. Here's my shield. Which is cool. Yeah, it's nice, I guess.
Which builds to a very cool scene.
Absolutely. Right, so they get to Cronus' ship or island or hideout or whatever, and it is Galactus' corpse. And oh shit! Wait, are these henchmen? Are they AIM people?
Oh yeah, that's the henchmen from every universe. It seems like there's AIM. I think there's Hydra in there. There's parademons.
Parademons. Oh man! So all the cannon fodder.
Yeah, all the cannon fodder. All the B-list villains. All the rogues gallery that you don't care about.
That's pretty funny. Yeah. So then it's just a ground assault, right? It's just the core teams doing a ground assault. Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, and Green Lantern yell "Avengers Assemble,"
which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of cheesy. I guess it is.
I mean, they don't have a Justice League slogan, so
yeah, it's true. Yeah,
Justice League.
Yeah. Okay, so then some fuckery starts going on because there's like reality ripples. And that's just right. That's just the excuse, right? Just to get everyone on the roster, just to make an appearance.
Yeah, I think that's what it is, and at the same time to re-put like Barry and Hal in their places. Well, maybe not Barry, but mostly Hal, because that like Spectre comes in later, and that's important. But but it is super fascinating to see like them basically breaking reality as they're doing this too, to get more characters in.
Cap yells, John, update the newcomers, feed a status board direct into their minds. Yeah, I guess he could do that, which is cool.
Intrusive Thoughts by Martian Manhunter.
Jesus, yeah. So it's this is just, at this point, it's just the ultimate showdown of Ultimate Destiny. And it's just like cameos, like, oh, here's Batroc, here's Batroc fighting Batman, here's Prometheus fighting Cap. yada yada yada. Like the suits are changing.
Mm-hmm.
So like Superman does have that weird like electric blue thing that I was talking about. He has a mullet at one point.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of very cutesy references, I guess is what you would call them.
Yeah, a little like deep cuts for fans.
Totally. Hal turns into Kyle.
Which my favorite thing though is Kyle remembers what happened, so he's like, "Why am I here?" And he's still blue.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's like no time passed. Yeah. Even Cap's shield changes while it's
it changes into like the futuristic shield that he gets.
Yeah. So yeah, it's nonsense. It's absolute. It's just
Rise of Skywalker. It's all that's it.
Sure, but then they see who is it? Eternity and Kismet.
Mm-hmm.
I forget which one's from which universe. I think Kismet is DC, maybe. I actually don't know. But they're like the two like entities who kind of I don't know. They're like the universal avatar, the representative.
Eternity is from Marvel, and I believe Kismet's from DC.
Correct. So they use their imagery like throughout the series. Like it's like once upon a time there's a universe, and they have like a Milky Way galaxy and like Eternity's hand or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they represent the Marvel and DC universes combining is Eternity and Kismet are boning,
basically. Yeah, and like in the prelude to each issue, they're like doing like a weird tango dance.
Yeah, and there's like something kind of I can't find the word for it. It's kind of like bittersweet.
Yeah, it reminds me of like a Renaissance painting, honestly.
Yeah,
like where there's some sadness somewhere in this.
Yeah. Oh man. I'm just kind of scrolling through and some crazy. Like they think that fucking I don't know if it's Wally or Barry or one of the Flashes and Hawkeye is supposedly dead.
Mm-hmm.
Vision's about to fucking die, so he shoots a bunch of solar energy at Superman. Thor is getting rocked, so he throws Mjolnir, and Superman catches it.
Mm-hmm.
So now he has the shield and the hammer, and he throws me. He like smashes through walls, and they're about to fight Krona, but it turns out the Flash and Hawkeye are still alive, and they blow up a thing with an arrow.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. Hal Jordan, what's his face? Spectre, right?
Yep.
He separates the two Earths.
Yeah, it looks like it puts up a big struggle for him to do that.
I know, he just he just pushes them physically, which, like, yeah, you're right, that's ridiculous. And then it shows like Kismet and Eternity like having like longing, like gesturing longingly at each other as they like slowly separate.
But my favorite thing is like they watch the Earths the universes get separated, but they're just still sitting on the corpse of Galactus.
Well, it's reforming, right?
Yeah,
the arm starts coming out because Galactus is coming back to life. So yeah, it's nice. Then they go back to the worlds. It's just the tale has reached an ending, and then they salute. Superman says, "Whether we fear we do too much or not enough." Cap says, "We keep trying. Glad to have met all of you." And then Wanda does the goddamn, like, what did we learn on the show tonight?
Yeah.
And now that we've come together, worked together, overcome our differences, we're forced to return to incompatible worlds. But I suppose that's how it has to be. And it's like, again, no subtlety needed.
Nope.
It's just like, yes, I get it.
Which in a way, like, they're trying to capture kind of like a golden age of comics, and that's kind of how those messages get hammered in.
Yeah, and you know what? I like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it works.
I'm making fun of it, but I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, these are two distinct universes. These are the flaws and the strengths they both have, and this is why if they were to actually merge, this would never work out. That would be a goddamn mess. And then Grandmaster's alive, and Krona's an egg, which comes back later to something I've never read, so fuck if I know what happens to him. JLA Avengers.
There's a good line after they separate the worlds where Soup tries to go pick up the hammer again. And basically Thor's like, okay, buddy, don't get a big head. My dad put a spell on it that your greatest time of need, you could pick it up. And so like it's kind of like taking back any kind of idea that Superman was worthy enough to hold the hammer, which I think is kind of silly.
Sure, really yeah.
And then I think Grandmaster says until like next time or something like that to like allude that this could happen again.
Yeah.
And what's super fascinating about that is they've been kind of teasing that.
Doomsday Clock did a little
Doomsday Clock teased it. The newest Thor books kind of teased it.
Can you explain both of those teases?
Yeah, so I don't have the issues on him because that would take forever to find. But Doomsday Clock, they were talking about crises, like Dr. Manhattan was seeing the future and seeing different crises, and he talked about a secret crisis, which is Secret Wars crisis put together, and it showed pictures of like the Hulk and Superman fighting and stuff, and that's supposed to take place in 2031, I think they said. I just put a year on it.
Probably when AT&T and Disney merge into one giant conglomerate.
That's what because
I don't. AT&T and Disney were not the owners of these properties back when this crossover happened. So now that those corporations are super competitors, like I don't see this happening. In this decade.
Honestly, they would have to do it like behind the big wigs' backs. Honestly, like. They have to get a point where the comics are just not under any scrutiny and they just do it.
Yeah.
But in Thor, and there's also been other references recently in other books, but these are the two that come to mind. In Thor, the recent Thor with Donny Cates, they talk about kind of like the heat death of the universe in a lot of ways, but more of like something evil that's coming after Galactus. And they show it consuming one world, and it shows like all the colors of the Justice League, and it talks about how there's like gods on this earth and stuff, and it destroys that earth. So like it's referencing all the Justice League stuff. There was a Wonder Woman reference recently somewhere too, but I don't remember where in Avengers.
Right.
In Marvel somewhere.
Right. Didn't Hawkeye call the Justice League? They called them like Squadron Supreme wannabes at some point.
Which I think Squadron Supreme was Marvel's answer to the Justice League at that one point.
Right. Like I think there are some very clear parallels there, but like there's a fucking scene where someone says, "Watch out, Captain Marvel," and it's both Marvel and Shazam saying thanks because they're both right next to each other.
It's good times.
Yeah, a lot of cutesy nudge stuff like that. Which is like, what?
Chris, when you read this as a kid growing up, right? How do you think the book itself influenced you from that transition from DC to Marvel?
I wouldn't say it swayed me because it was definitely the movies that swayed me, but it gave me like a good reference point. Like now I read the voices differently because of the movies, but I think the fact that this title very explicitly drew parallels helped me to understand those Marvel concepts better in like a Rosetta Stone kind of way.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this is a good crash course to both universes.
Totally. As like incomprehensible as it eventually gets, definitely like all the big idea stuff that they talk about, definitely helps to, like kind of outline what these two universes are both about, and. It's like in 2020, it's a novelty, because we have no clue for corporate reasons, like if this will ever happen again.
And even like the book itself is kind of rare at this point because they don't reprint the hardcover, they don't reprint the soft cover. So you either find those old versions of it or you find the single issue somewhere.
Totally. Yeah. I had always thought a lot about, I've been thinking a lot about movie preservation and game preservation, but comic book preservation is something that's kind of a blind spot with me.
Yeah, no, it's a interesting thing too. I know it's getting harder and harder with some of the older books, and like some of the companies that just didn't matter, they didn't survive.
Totally.
So like,
yeah. So say if you wanted to read like those weird amalgam stuff or whatever, like could you? I can't imagine there's somewhere you can find it officially in a digital format.
I'll search real fast. But yeah, like those kind of things are super fascinating, and I think about even really the Silver Age and the Golden Age stuff of comics, because comics back in like the 50s and the 40s, they were made to be read and thrown away. Like they weren't made to be preserved. That's why they were 15 cents.
Right.
Yeah, and so a lot of those just get lost because they weren't made on good paper. That no one cared about them. Yeah, it's super fascinating. And then you see these like crossovers. Yeah, like the licensing of them is ridiculous.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and when you have two giant conglomerates like that, things get a little it's a little more complicated, I assume. Yeah, it's I just like looking at the pictures.
no, it's George Perez's art is always just stunning.
Yeah. It's kind of like a Smash Bros thing where it's like they look like they belong next to each other, and it's weird. I assume he's worked on both titles.
Yeah, he worked lots. You know about Crisis, right?
Yes.
Have you ever seen the original Crisis books?
I know what they looked like. Yeah.
He did all the art for those.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like he's had his hand in all kinds of.
I'm thinking about Earths crashing against each other and people with their arms up and being like, no. Like,
yep, that's him.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's cool seeing those aesthetics actually kind of blend together pretty deeply. I mean, the first issue cover, it's the big three of both teams.
Yep.
And it looks right.
It looks right, and like the way that they're all kind of looking shocked at the same time.
Yeah.
Again, gives me that vibe of old like horror movies and stuff where it's just the cover of someone looking at something super scary and you don't know what's out there.
Yeah.
And and at the same time, it kind of gives you the idea of like the fans at the time. They're like, well, what's going to be in this book? Are they going to make me hate one side more than the other?
Yeah.
Which I think in the amalgam stuff, they did try to do that. Like really make one side evil and one side good, which I think it was DC was good and Marvel was evil.
Weird.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, because I read a lot of those in like library editions, but I don't remember them completely. But it sure did feel like that more so in the amalgam stuff than it did in this.
Right. To me, it's just kind of a shame that corporations just have a stronghold on all these properties because this seems like a fun thing that I did. And it's kind of sad seeing, I can't speak for the comics, but the current iterations of the movies.
Yeah, for sure.
Very different paths they've taken. I was rewatching Justice League, Joss League, as the fans call it.
Sorry for your loss.
Yeah. And I'm actually in the, because I have HBO Max, which is now available on most devices. Batman v Superman. And I remember when Batman v Superman was supposed to come out the same day as Captain America: Civil War.
Yeah, and what's super fascinating about that, I like one movie more than the other, and it's not the Marvel one.
Weird.
But again, at the same time, there's nostalgia built into it. There's stuff that I wanted to see in both that I saw in one and didn't see in the other. But again, it's easy. I could easily say that Civil War is a better movie. But it's like, what did I enjoy more? That's a whole different other story. And
sure.
And I think they both try to tackle the same issue, surprisingly, but both handled them poorly. And I do think Civil War handles it better than Batman vs Superman, because there's real big mischaracterizations in parts of Batman vs Superman.
both Batman and Superman are assholes in that movie.
Yep.
That's my review of Batman v Superman.
And then at some point in the third act, they finally figure out that, hey, guess what? These aren't our characters.
Yeah. It's a real heel turn from there. And it's interesting. They both tackle similar beats. Like, they both have, like, you know, issues of, there's a flashpoint, like the DC one being Metropolis getting leveled and Marvel being Sokovia, and then issues of accountability, and then there's a terrorist attack on the U.S. Capitol and in the United Nations, and then revelation. There's a big battle, and then there's a revelation about parents. That's
it becomes a thing. It becomes a really interesting dichotomy, though, of what they're asking, what the question they're asking is.
Yeah,
and Batman vs Superman this shows like the difference between the two universes, though, in a lot of ways. Batman vs Superman ends up asking what is God in a lot of ways, right? And so
it will, Jesse, it will not stop asking that question. Lex Luthor will not shut the fuck up.
Yeah, and the symbolism in the end, like everything, it's all about religionist symbol. I'm running out of words. Symbolism in Batman vs Superman, but then you get to Civil War, and it's about family and it's about friendship, and again shows Marvel is more connected to the human problems in the world. Again,
it's a lot more grounded.
Yeah, they're both exemplifying what each universe is about, but they just do it in so weird ways.
Yeah, and you know, parts of that is because I would assume that the movies have much more corporate meddling.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Justice League is the most comically like corporate meddled movie I've ever read about.
That and Suicide Squad, man, are just like the most fascinating things about. Oh, we need to backtrack.
Yeah, and like hearing about like Justice League, where it's like, oh, we gotta like I don't care if this movie fails, but the executives have to have their bonuses and shit like that. And this movie's gonna be it's gonna be less than 2 hours long. So Joss Whedon made it 1 hour and 59 minutes long.
Which what they're trying to do in that movie is not enough time.
Absolutely not. And I'm sure Disney has their own problems, but like I feel like Kevin Feige of Marvel Studios.
He's proven himself.
He's just a better figurehead. He is more of a visionary than. I don't know if Jeff Johns is still the dude for their movies.
I think he's might have stepped down at this point, but even then, like, after when you hit Avengers, Feige proved like he can do this, and like there's always been some of that undercurrent stuff about directorial meddling in a lot of ways, like as we saw with Ant-Man, and as now we're seeing with Doctor Strange too. And directors who have not done the next movies talk about it every once in a while, who are like, if you're going to do these movies, you have to follow their rules. So like, that's super fascinating. And then when you have a figurehead like Snyder, who because I think Jeff Johns came into it too late, and then also at the same time didn't get the power I think he was expecting. Snyder was really running that show at that point. And when you have a director running the show, all your movies start to feel the same. I mean, people complain about that with the MCU, but I think that's a different thing. And at the same time, like all the stories feel exactly the same. And I think that becomes an issue in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So I did. There's this is like a very sentimental thing, but I think a couple years ago, I think it was for like some sort of Academy presentation, but it was like some sort of tribute to, I think, the Donners. Maybe like Richard Donner and Lauren Schuler Donner. And they had Kevin Feige and Jeff Johns gave speeches, and they had a photo op with each other.
The Donner cut of Superman 2 wouldn't exist without Jeff Johns. Like, that's a huge
thing. And Lauren Donner was like the Kevin Feige of the X-Men films.
Yeah.
So like Kevin Feige learned a lot of ropes from her, along with like being, Kevin Feige is a Marvel fan. He knows all this. He knows his shit.
I think they're very similar in a lot of ways. I think there's a lot of debate. I've been around a lot of discourse around Johns lately, which has been interesting.
I saw Jeff Johns at New York Comic Con 2018. That dude has big arms.
That dude, he's kind of swole. But he's passionate. And there's good criticism about his stuff. Don't get me wrong. But like he is passionate about the characters he works on, and that definitely bleeds through. If he pulls the right things out of those characters, that's debatable. That's 100% debatable. Some people say he made Green Lantern way too much a cop, which is fine. I get that. But at the same time, that Green Lantern's the one I mostly grew up with next to the Kyle Rayner stuff. So like,
sure, yeah.
There's a weird dichotomy there. So it's super fascinating. But I think him and Fahey, though, come with the same kind of passion to the characters.
I want them to do a panel.
I would love that.
I want them to talk for 2 hours
just about characters.
About characters, about the fundamental differences, and because I'm like a total slut for logistics and corporate nonsense, like I want them to talk about like, I mean, they probably can't.
Yeah, I mean, but who knows?
You know, because the CEOs of Disney and AT&T, respectively, probably wouldn't like it. But I need them. I want them to talk shop. You know,
comic panels, weirder things have happened.
Yeah, because like I'm sure if it took Disney and Sony like forever to like come up with Spider-Man deals, I don't think there'll ever be a cinematic. Like it took them forever to put Batman and Superman together.
Oh yeah, it's definitely gonna be like 30 years from now when they've run out of ideas.
Wasn't like the quote from Quesada, oh yeah, we'll make the mainstream and the Ultimate Universes crossover when we run out of ideas.
Yeah, basically.
And they did Spider-Man.
and like I think they talked about how they have plans till like 2030 at this point, and I'm like, I don't know how you have those plans.
Is that why they did the 2031 estimates?
Maybe.
What would you like to see from a future DC Marvel crossover, considering the current landscapes of both universes? And
that's the thing, like they're deeply different in a lot of ways, even though they have the same core ideas. That this book has. Their characters are so far different.
Yeah.
I think overall Marvel has a way more diverse cast of characters into their daily comics, but that makes Marvel feel way more bloated in a lot of ways. I mean, if you look about like books putting out too, right? Not before what's happened right now in the industry, they were the market share of the books, but they were still barely making the profits. So like, yeah, Marvel's definitely bloated in a lot of its characters, but they're willing to expand their roster. Well, on the other hand, DC's like, we expand our roster, those characters die. Not die like literally, even though sometimes they do, but like die off in their books because no one's buying them. So like they're way more still captured into that era that this book came out in. So it's it would be super fascinating to see how them try to make those team ups when there's too many characters to team up on one side.
Yeah, they're both pretty bloated at this point. Like, it's kind of it's. Maybe I'm not giving it more of a shot, and I don't really know what they've been doing in recent years. But to me, it's just inaccessible.
Yeah, no. And like they try to be accessible, and then they failed, and they try again, and then they fail, and then they give up, and now you kind of have to be like, okay, let me ask my nerd friend where it's the best place to start, and even then, I might give you 5 books.
Right.
Yeah. So it's super fascinating. I think comics can be for everybody, no matter where you're at. You just have to. It's kind of like when you're trying to dive into like a rushing river, right? You have to find that one moment where it's calm enough, and then you can dive in, and then maybe you can swim upstream and catch up on the stuff you missed, and then go to the future. But sometimes it's just everything's moving way too fast.
Yeah.
I
like that.
So
comic books, it's like a river.
Yeah, I mean, in all ways. So I have some questions that I made up for you, and I want to hear your opinions on them.
Hit me.
So talking about crossovers, if you could pick 2 franchises or just 2 characters, if franchises are too big, what kind of crossover would you want to see with just 2 either franchises or characters?
Christ, like any,
but they'll get a comic book one. They won't get a movie or anything. It's just going to be a comic book.
Oh man, they already did all those. Like they did fucking Doctor Who in the Next Generation in a comic, didn't they?
They might have. I know they did Green Lantern in the Next Gen.
I think totally did.
They did like they did two of those, and I think they did Planet of the Apes and Star Trek. I don't know which series though.
Mm-hmm. What? That's pretty stupid. Man, that's a really that's a taller question. That's taller to me than it would have been when I was a kid. Because I feel like everything's been done already. Like,
yeah,
Smash Bros exists.
That's why I think characters are way important, because like franchises definitely crossover, but then you lose some of the character interactions.
Right. Yeah. Like, listen, once Sonic and Mario are doing Olympic swimming, like,
yeah,
none, like the novelty has just kind of worn off.
Yeah.
And like nothing surprises me anymore.
That
being said, even though I don't like Arrowverse, I got a little giddy at the Ezra Miller, Grant Gustin scene.
That was weird, but also very fascinating.
Yeah, no, I mean, because like it's pretty much what I wanted. Just like to see two different incarnations of the same character, like talking to each other about the differences.
Yep. And I also love the Tyler Holton Superman, and I think that's his last name, and the Brandon Routh Superman, which is the same canonical Superman from Superman Returns, I believe.
Yes.
It's just super fascinating there.
Yeah. I cannot think of a good answer, so I'm going to look around my bookshelves and see the first two things.
Okay.
Die Hard and Thomas the Tank Engine.
Okay. That would sell. That would sell. I know at least one of my friends who would buy that right now.
Sir Toppin Hat is the Hans Gruber of this crossover, and
he's always been the Hans Gruber of that.
He has taken over the station, and Thomas is at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Thomas has to roll his wheels on broken glass.
Yeah. I was literally about to make that same joke. I'm glad we're on the same page.
Thomas has that angry face on. He is like, have a few laughs, get a few drinks.
That's really fucking funny.
The next question is, what would you? And we kind of already talked about this, but what would you want to see more out of the mainstream companies?
I mean, what I want is never going to happen. I just want them to play nice with each other.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
I don't know who's in charge of editorial for either of these companies, but
I know. Oh well, this is the funny thing. Jim Lee is technically editor-in-chief of DC right now, because Dan DiDio got fired recently. And they were both editors-in-chief. CB Busick is editor-in-chief in Marvel, and he had a controversy where he pretended to be an Asian man for the longest time.
Oh, that was him?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
That's when that came out again, because he was becoming editor-in-chief.
But
it seems like Jim Lee has a good head on his shoulders, so I hope we get some good stuff out of DC.
I almost met him at Comic-Con. I was a few feet away from him. I don't know if I don't remember if I said anything.
He's a very nice man. He's very supportive of his daughter on TikTok.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't, because eventually the conversation becomes like profits and wages.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're right.
However, the thing is that I know this isn't exactly your question. This is more so, but like, hey, well, if they did another crossover, but like, that's kind of what I want to see.
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell the story would be, because they kind of like did what you could. They did like, I think the most obvious thing. I mean, no, the most obvious thing was a fight.
Mm-hmm.
The smartest thing to do was an ideological war.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what else you would do after that.
Yeah, honestly, it'd probably have to be a revision of this. I know I know there's creators out there who want to do this. Like, they want to write this.
Hey, I hope if they have good ideas, yeah, have at it.
Because I know I saw recently that someone asked Donny Cates, like, if they did do this again, would you, and they gave it to you, would you have a story? He's like, I've had a story for years.
Wow.
Like, so like there's creators out there who have thought about this. And I bet you anything Scott Snyder's thought about it, and a bunch of other creators have thought about it.
Yeah, that's why I'm not in charge of these, because I can't forget.
Yeah.
I can't.
For crying out loud, Grant Morrison's had like X-Men knockoffs in his books all the time, and
right.
and all in the DC stuff, because he's just like, I don't care about legal issues. Just make them look different enough.
Mm-hmm.
So that's super fascinating.
Yeah, really, all I want is just like accessibility.
Yeah, no, that's key. It's really important.
I want to know what's happening.
It's hard because like it seems like now they're pushing more and more to original graphic novels, but they're not canon and they're like at random ages.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, people are buying them. They're very good sellers. So that's cool. Like, people are reading comics, but at the same time, how do you get people into the modern books?
By making them like the movies, apparently. What if we just made Nick Fury black?
Yeah.
No, what if Nick Fury had a son who happens to look like Samuel L. Jackson and also lost his eye?
Yeah, that also is an issue too, because like now you can't have both. Like, you should be able to have both and have them be separate, and that becomes a whole other thing.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it is good, though, that DC should adapt what Marvel does a lot of times and has recap pages at the beginning of each of their books.
Oh, cool.
Which kind of helps if you're jumping into the middle of an arc, but doesn't always help knowing the complete canon of anything.
Yeah.
Next question is, out of the main characters in this miniseries, who was the best team up?
I liked the brief period of calm where Cap and Batman were detectiving together.
It's super fascinating too, because I don't ever see Cap as a detective, but the Winter Soldier stuff, he very much was.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. There are like little moments, like he sees the Robin suit and he's like, wow, you lost a partner. Which is funny because both Jason Todd and Bucky Barnes come back to life, but whatever. Mm-hmm. So that I think there's a similar reason why like both of them are my favorite cinematic characters of their respective universes.
Yeah.
So to me, even though it maybe wasn't like the coolest power duel, it was the most satisfying crossover for me.
Yeah, I agree. That was a very good one.
Because Steve Rogers, Bruce Wayne, very different people.
Very different, but similar morals in a lot of ways.
Yes. Yeah, that was cool.
And last question, in one sentence, why should people watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
Let me think about my words really carefully.
Yeah.
And what if it's just a URL to my Pace magazine piece about why they should do just that? I'm true. Oh man, I need a thesaurus.
It's gonna be complicated to add into it.
Yeah, no, it. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. shows how different parts of the Marvel Cinematic Universe can occupy their own space, but the reason why this television show works the best is because it has, because of its nature as a television show, it has so much more space to do more things, and boy, do they do a lot of things.
There you go. That's good sense.
God, I love that show.
It just came back.
It did for its final season, and you know what? It's probably the best time. It's the perfect time for S.H.I.E.L.D. to come back, and it's the perfect time for S.H.I.E.L.D. to end because Marvel Television, not a thing anymore.
Not really.
So to have the thing that started it all to also end it is perfect.
Yep.
I want it to end before it gets legitimately bad. Mm-hmm. And I want Kevin Feige to adopt those characters. If he does not, I'm going to find his Los Angeles home. I'm going to kidnap all of his collection of baseball caps and hold them hostage.
I mean, it's fair. It's the least the man can do for you.
No man should have that many baseball caps. You're insane.
Well, Chris, again, thank you for being on. This has been a lot of fun. Where can people find the stuff that you want to promote and follow you in your thoughts about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and why there should be more crossovers and things?
Sure. I'm at Compenderizer on Twitter. I am a freelance writer, but I am, as you mentioned, the PR coordinator for Uppercut, and I do a lot of written work for them at www.uppercutcrit.com. You can also check out my currently on hiatus podcast, AP Marvel, and we get deep into a lot of this stuff. So things like crossovers, the nature of crossovers, and why Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is awesome, and a lot of political stuff as well. You can find a whole backlog of episodes there on your podcast app of choice.
And Chris, is Uppercut still doing the Pride merch stuff?
Oh yeah, no. Yes, June is Pride Month. It's a weird Pride Month because we're all
locked up still.
We're all in our underground bunkers, but Jessica Cogswell has curated and designed a number of wonderful Pride merchandise. You can find the link on Uppercut.
And I'll link it again for this episode. I think I've linked it for the last.
Awesome. Yeah.
And last thing I know, like this, I do this show to be way positive, but the world is kind of weird and dark. I just wanted to put out there too that in the description of this episode there will be donation links for and ways you can support for the stuff that's going on and for the George Floyd stuff. It's important, and we need to keep it around. We need to keep talking about it, and we need to make sure that we put our money where our mouth is. So I'll have a bunch of links in the description for that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, it's important. I don't want to take the show down real fast, but I just wanted to make sure that's in there too. But yeah, again, Chris, thank you so much. This has been great. Hopefully we can find another crossover to talk about in the future.
2031, my friend. I'll meet you then.
Yeah. Okay. Hey everybody, it's Jesse again, coming back in at the end to plug some of the podcast social media links and give some credits for what you hear on the podcast and see on your feed. You can find us on Twitter at Comic Books Pod. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/comicbooksmatter. You can find us on Patreon at patreon.com at /comicbooksmatter. Only $1 tier right now, and it just gives me your support, but soon we'll have some new content on there for you. You can reach me by email at comicbooksmatter@gmail.com if you have any questions for guests, if you have any stories about comics that impacted you, or if you want to be a guest on the show. Logo by my friend Steven. He's great, has nothing to promote, but if you see Steven, tell him he's great, and thanks for the logo. The theme is Joy in the Restaurant by David Szesztay, and I found it on freemusicarchive.org. Thanks, everybody, and I hope you have a good rest of your weekend.